Welcome to the second viewing, where we view it twice so you can listen once. I'm Dan.
I'm Kyle.
Shaka bra.
All right, everybody. Well, welcome to another episode of the podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed last week's episode of the Off the Cuff segment. It's our first go at that, so feel free to give us some suggestions on how we can improve the show.
Always happy with feedback.
Yeah, we're liking that. We had a fun time doing it, catching a new flick and talking about it. But we're back to our old form, so to speak. And we're doing another movie from 2015, which the more and more I look at our backlog, we've covered a lot of films in 2015.
It was a good year for movies.
I know.
Generally.
I mean, like, I never thought of it as, like, a fantastic year, but looking back at it...
I kind of like it better than this year, if I'm being totally honest. I feel
It always feels that way until, like, the next year. Do you kind of know what I mean?
Yeah, okay, maybe,
but
sure.
I agree. I think there were some stronger titles, but... Anyways, that being said, so this movie we're covering today is Me and Earl and the Dying Girl.
Is it really Me and Earl and the Dying Girl?
Yeah.
I thought it was Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl.
Me too. I forgot what the first and.
I wonder why they double-ended that title. I feel like there's got to be a reason for it, because I don't think it's grammatically correct.
I think they like the length. I think it was like trying to be like a long title kind of movie. You know, big bands do that sometimes. They have like really long song titles just because.
For effect, yeah.
That's my only guess on that. But yeah, this is a great film directed by Alfonso Gomez-Rejon, who sounded like a really familiar director to me, but actually hasn't directed a whole lot. He directed the season of American Horror Story, Coven. That's kind of what he's most known for.
Oh.
And he also did another horror movie, so...
I don't know how popular the Coven series was. Like, I think I saw season 1, 2, 3, maybe... No, I don't think I saw 4. American Horror Story.
I've actually only ever watched one episode of American Horror Story, and it was Coven, and it had Stevie Nicks from Fleetwood Mac in it, and I was very confused.
I kind of like the Haunted House one,
okay.
And I have a feeling that I would probably like the circus one, but I haven't actually watched it.
It looks creepy. Freak Show, right? That's what
yeah,
it's called.
I like the idea that they change the setting and the characters, and not always the cast, but a lot of times the cast.
Right. Well, that's kind of like a change of form here, because he did make another like horror movie, and then this film is just kind of like a coming of age.
Yeah. Almost a love story, or more of a coming. Yeah,
it's
some romance.
I would say it's definitely directed towards like an older teen audience to a degree. It feels like if I watched this movie when I was like 17, I would have thought this was the best movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, but I mean, between 16 and like 25 is probably the biggest target demographic here. Mind you, I feel like it's still relatable even if you're in your mid-30s.
The themes are relatable, but every time it's like a high school-based movie, it's kind of hard not to like think of you when you were that age.
Yeah.
You know? But anyways, yeah, so this film is pretty interesting because the whole plot services around this relationship between a boy and a girl. And at the beginning of the film, he says, well, you know, this isn't a happy story. It doesn't end well.
Yeah.
And
then he also, I think at the beginning of the story, he also says, so like, you know, spoiler alert here, folks, that the dying girl doesn't die, which is played by Emily. What's her?
Oh, God, yeah, what's this girl's name? Actually, it's Olivia Cooke.
Olivia Cooke, okay.
Yeah.
So Olivia Cooke doesn't die at the end, is what he says. Now we actually end up finding later towards the end of the movie when he comes back to narrating and he says, I had to tell you that she wasn't going to die at the beginning, otherwise you would have tuned out because you don't want to listen to a sad story. And it's not sad.
It's not. This movie's interesting. It's
like, I don't know.
How does this movie make you feel? I guess I'll ask you that. And also,
it makes me like sort of accept death and like love the things that I already have in my life. I don't know. It's kind of gives me that whole.
It's like a hopeful, sad movie in a weird way.
Right. It's like even if I died today, I have to at least think that what I did up until then was decent.
Totally.
Right. Because otherwise, what you're doing now is not worth fucking doing, I guess. And so that's what I think the movie's more centered around that theme. It's how
like accepting yourself and accepting the people around you for who they are. Kind of thing, or like circumstances.
It's circumstances, things you do, what makes you happy, all that kind of thing. So I feel
I feel that.
The main character, I can't even fucking remember his name, but
we should disclaim that we haven't seen this movie in a little while, and this is the true telling of the new format of the show. Where it comes to this is our first viewing, our thoughts on the first time we've seen it. It's only been once for each of us.
There's definitely going to be a little bit more contrast because I mean I would venture to say I haven't seen this movie in. And I think it was 6 months ago, maybe.
I saw this movie not terribly long ago, about 2 months ago. Let's see, it didn't seem that long in my head, but when I say it like that, it's been a while. But nonetheless, so when we break at the show, we'll have our second viewing thoughts. But kind of besides the point, but I thought we'd throw that in there just so you
Yeah,
understand.
so I think there's going to be a huge contrast when we come back after having just seen the movie again. It's going to be nice even for us to go back and look at what
I'm excited to
we
watch it
said
again.
about the first time
Yeah.
and not having seen it in a while.
But
So
to answer your question, though, the main character's name is Greg. He's played by Thomas Mann.
okay, so the point I was getting at is I think Greg is struggling in some aspects of his life, like most people his age, senior year of high school or almost senior year of high school kind of are, generally speaking.
You don't know what's next. You're unsure of the future.
Earl, his best bud, seems to have a little bit better head on his shoulders for the most part and seems to be trying to help Greg, the main guy. But the person who really helps him realize how to make the changes in his life was the dying girl, Olivia.
That's her name. It's her actress name.
Yeah,
Right?
it's her
The character is Rachel. I got the wiki
character's
page up here just so we're not totally lost.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, the guy who played Greg was also in that movie Project X. Remember that? He like kind of.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
He was in the main character kind of thing in that movie, or the naive kid sort of.
Right, yeah.
For my total like perception of this movie, like looking back at it, it's kind of like a film lover's movie in a way, and that's kind of why I wanted to cover this movie, because there's a large portion of this film where they make a lot of obscure references to like film history and film culture and like, filmmaking.
And matter of fact, Greg and Earl, in their spare time since they were kids, they had been making short movies based on movies they liked, kind of thing.
Yeah,
where they had a formula for it. I can't remember what they did. Was it recreating?
It was
the
like
same
it
movie?
was like remakes. It's kind of a similar idea to the movie Be Kind Rewind. If you've ever seen that,
Yeah.
sort of in a way, but it was more like their take on the movie as kids, just based on the budget they had, what they could, as much as they could do, kind of thing. Which I mean, we can relate because we've been making short videos of all kinds since we were their age.
Yeah.
So I mean, that definitely was something I connected with in this movie. But yeah, like it's strange because to me, like, I mean, I'm no film expert, but like, there's little like small Easter eggs in this movie, like talking about Werner Herzog and like all these weird like obscure references that I think probably go over people's heads, but it's more or less just saying, oh, well, these guys know their shit about film. They're just kids who love film.
It goes a little bit like whether you fucking know film as well as the guys in the characters in the movie do. It doesn't really matter. It just backs up the fact that this is what they're into and they know their shit about it.
It's not like a necessity, but it definitely was a bit of a plus for me in a way because I was like, these are I would have loved hanging out with these kids in high school kind of thing.
Yeah.
But no, I think we should talk more a bit about just like this tone of this movie because it's not quite happy, it's not quite sad.
Well, I think it comes from the perspective of Greg, who at that point in his life, he's not happy or sad. He's just kind of like figuring his way, or he's got to figure out, he's got to come over some form of small difficulty. Otherwise, he's going into depression kind of thing.
And I think it talks a lot about like the artistic process too, because it's like him and Earl make these they make these remake films sort of things, these cover films, however you want to talk about it. Just say they remade Home Alone. They just made their own version of Home Alone kind of thing.
Yeah.
Usually with a comedic twist, it seemed like, in a lot of their ways. But where the plot kind of develops is that he's asked to make a film for Rachel as she's in the hospital. Like, and it kind of becomes his like magnum opus, like his whole life's leading up to it, because he has such a hard time making this film because he doesn't know where to start because it's kind of a very original project. Not to say what him and Earl were was original, but it was
a different style than his previous movies with Earl. So
it ended up kind of consuming him in a way. Like it was really affecting him, and he was putting it off because he thought he couldn't live up to the pressure, or he wasn't going to make anything good.
It was a series of like ups and downs,
which I think is the artistic process in a way. Maybe not like cut and dry, but like in a way, I think it relates to that.
Yeah,
and
I think so. But I think it's always like that every time you try something new, but after you've done the same thing, there's still ups and downs, but not nearly as high and as far down. Yeah. Whereas, there's points in the movie where Greg's he's super sad, he's pissed off, whatever, he's upset, and then there's points where he's super happy and couldn't be happier with what he's doing.
Right. But I think this lends to the plot more or less. That makes it interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's not entirely reality, but I feel like there could be people who take it that seriously or it affects them that much.
But no, I think I think what you said before is a good description of the movie. It's about his artistic process and the people involved in this particular project.
But the thing is, he makes it about his life, essentially, or the people around him, and that's why it affects him so much, because it's like, it's a very personal project. He's, and he's commissioned, I guess, to make this movie, but he takes it upon himself to make it kind of like, I don't know, I think maybe he kind of like gets himself, he kind of like goes over it goes over his head at first, and then he kind of makes it as big as he can. He's like, well, if I'm doing this, it has to be meaningful, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they kind of make it sort of subtle about that's how he's feeling about it. Like, you don't really know why he's so upset and whatnot. But then when he actually shows the movie to Rachel in the hospital as she's dying, it's like the best part of the movie. I love that scene. It's
yeah. Well,
it's heart-wrenching.
Well, I think a lot of times, as you probably find this too, that when you're doing something that is representative of you in a creative way, you never want to half-ass it because people are just going to think you do a half-assed job always. So, and whether at that point you want to do the project or not, you might have already said yes to it. So now you're in this fucking slump where it's like, fuck, I don't want to do this, but now I've got to do it. And if I'm going to do it, it better be fucking good because I don't want people to look at me and see someone who's going to do some half-ass shit.
And I think that's good. Especially, like, I think you're totally right. Especially if you're showing it to a large audience or it's everyone's going to see it or whatever it might be. But this, I think, was just like a personal project because Rachel meant so much to him. They have a really, like, well-developed friendship throughout the movie. And it's like the one person that helped him through the hard times, the way he was helping her was through this film. So, like, the pressure was on, kind of.
Yeah.
Like, she was going to see it I mean, I don't know. Does anyone else ever watch the film, the movie? I can't remember. I don't think so. I think it might be
I don't think so. Well, I think he denied Earl seeing it. I could be wrong on that.
Yeah. So, but nonetheless, a very small amount of people, roughly just the people who he wanted it to be shown to.
Yeah.
But even then, he took it so importantly. And I don't know, just the themes in the movie, it was like kind of this like abstract visual, but it was like really like the basics of like what he liked about film as he describes his like personal taste throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And it was like, I didn't expect this movie to have like this crescendo, this like big like climax. I mean, it was up until that point, I thought it was a fine film. Like, it was good. It was well executed.
Yeah.
But then that really surprised me, and that's kind of why I still like this movie to this day. And like,
it definitely stuck with me more than other films in this sort of realm do. Like up and coming movie or up and coming, what would you call it? Fucking
like directors and like young children sort of thing, or
just movies that include like sort of the high school lifestyle coming of age stories. I think generally this one sticks out to me because I think regardless of age, though age is a factor, regardless of it, you can still relate to this movie.
Oh, totally. No, when I mentioned that earlier, I was more or less just saying, like, I was putting myself in, like, younger Kyle's shoes sort of thing.
Yeah,
like,
I think I did too, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good for the coming age story. I mean, like, the past couple of years, we've actually had some really good ones, like, shout-outs to Spectacular Now and, like, Kings of Summer. Those are really two good movies. But this one stands out for me just only because it seems so simple at the beginning, in a way. Like, it didn't really have a lot to offer, and it had, like, the high school clique thing that was kind of, like, in a lot of these movies. Yeah. But then it played with all these really simple elements and made them interesting.
Well, I think it's tough, too. I mean, I think the plot point itself, the bare bones of it is tough. It would be tough for me to execute if I was making the film. Matter of fact, it would be fucking tough for me to execute any kind of film. But what I'm saying is to have a relationship between a guy, a best friend, and been forced into becoming friends with a chick in your high school who's dying, who you barely kind of know.
Yeah.
That's a tough plot point. Like, I don't think that I would be able to sort of cast that genre of movie very well. Like, I wouldn't be able to pull that off.
And I guess that's like, it's hard. Like, it's not really common for young characters to be dealing with such heavy like subject matter of like someone getting cancer and dying.
I feel like there's a lot of directions and ways you could take it, like. Well,
then they really didn't make. You see this movie throughout her illness, sort of thing, and I don't think they like. They don't overdo that aspect of the film, if you know what I mean. Like they make her still seem like a real person. It's like her sickness is not her only characteristic.
Yes, and she very much wants to be seen that way, though.
Yeah,
very heavily like.
But I think it's a good way to look at things. There's so many films that, or even like television, whatever it might be, that focus on this, but just see it like, oh, that's a sick person, like that's all she is. Yeah, she's a sick person. I mean, they can be handled poorly or well, but.
And it's cool how Greg handles it too.
Yeah, he handles it really well. He just sees her as a person he cares about or wants to care for, I guess.
Right, but in the beginning it was very much the opposite. In the beginning it's pretty funny, actually. His mom forced him to go hang out with her because she was fucking dying. She was diagnosed with leukemia.
Yeah,
I think it was leukemia, right? Or something very serious.
Right, and also I just want to bring up the principal, or like not principal, he was the guidance counselor, I think, in this film. Nick Offerman.
Yeah.
He's great in this movie.
I forgot about that, actually.
Or no, sorry, that's... Oh, damn it, I'm getting these characters
The
mixed up.
guidance-
That's his dad. Nick Offerman's his dad. Who played the guidance counselor in this movie?
But, oh, yeah, and, okay, so his dad, Nick Offerman, was this, like, very well-traveled, like... I don't know, ate all kinds of really different types of food. And he was very, like, sort of oddballish in terms of, I don't know, American mainstream dads go, I guess. But the guidance counselor...
I did not think it was this guy, but it's John Berthnow.
Oh, you're right. It totally is. And but he was really cool.
He was great. No, he was kind of the backbone to, like, Earl and Greg's... whatever issue they had, he was kind of there. He didn't like give all the best advice. He was their like adult
buddy.
Yeah,
because it's like your dad gives you advice to a certain extent,
right.
But your dad's also your dad. So I think a lot of kids, like I know I had sort of like an older bud who like sort of taught me the ways. Like, I think lots of people have that
and I think
growing up.
And it's nice to have it kind of in a, well, it's kind of unrealistic, honestly, to have it in a school setting. I feel like this guy would get fired on the spot. But that's besides the point. It's whatever. It's a movie. I can't harsh it for that. But, and there's a great scene with this guy where they have like spiked wonton soup or something like that.
Yeah, and they think, and so he brought the wonton soup, right? Yeah. But they also ate a brownie at the...
Yeah.
They ate a brownie from someone, and they ate soup from the guidance counselor, and they automatically assumed that the soup was spiked from the guidance counselor and not the fucking brownie that they
Which is
fed.
actually hilarious, honestly.
Yeah.
And I love that scene a lot. Also, Earl and Greg's friendship is pretty cool.
Yeah, because
Earl's not like... He's not your typical sidekick in a way.
No,
he's really his own person, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, he's his own main character. Like really, like he could have his own fucking movie about his life because him and Earl, they're best buds. They get together, they help each other out. But you know, if you're a fucking idiot, Earl's like, dog, you're an idiot. I'm out.
And
sorry.
Like they have a kind of like Earl's like family like life. He doesn't really want Greg to see. And he's kind of distant in ways and also very personal in other ways.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see as like best friends. Like casual best friends of this nature in film are usually just like they know everything about each other and nothing like they almost agree on everything until like maybe some like plot point where they disagree on something.
There's no secrets and all that kind of shit.
But this felt more real to me. It's like you can have best friends, but you still don't know everything about them.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
And like I think this was a good representation of that. This guy's also going to be the Blue Power Ranger, by the way, in the Power Rangers movie.
No fucking
Earl.
way.
Yeah, he's gonna be the Blue Power Ranger.
What's his actual name?
His name is DJ or RJ Cyler.
RJ Cyler.
So he seems pretty neat.
He was really good in this movie. He had a hell of a good performance. There was a fight scene with him, I think. Didn't he save fucking Greg from getting his ass kicked in the cafeteria or some shit?
I liked that. That was respect.
Yeah. And then afterwards, I think Earl gave him shit for it and was like, "Don't make me fucking do that shit again."
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's like, it's kind of a point in the film too where I think Earl was kind of maybe not pissed off at Greg, but was kind of like fed up with some of the shit he was doing.
Yeah, he was kind of like, Greg, you got issues. You're not the same, bud. Like, figure your shit out.
Everybody has problems, kind of thing. Like, it's funny in this movie. They have like this. The main character is always just like he's not always down on his luck, but he's really emotional guy. But there's people around him just kind of being like level-headed, being like, things happen, man. That this is life, you know. Like they treat this child like an adult, which I think is why the movie can be, you know, effective to people of a wide age audience. And the themes tell a true story to pretty much anyone of any age.
And I feel like it plays to different. This movie plays to different levels of maturity because these are clearly like Earl and Greg and Olivia, Rachel. Are very much like mature for their age. Like they're a little bit further ahead. They've got this sort of mature jump start on some of the other students. That's clear, you know, where everyone else is making fart jokes still.
I feel like teenagers high schoolers in film don't seem like they're not quite as like all there. But like, I mean, when we were 17, I mean, we were not the brightest kids on earth, but you know, I think we had our wits about ourselves. You know
I think we generally had some wits, mind you. I think I can remember a few instances of me being an idiot. But
well, I mean, everyone makes mistakes, and that's not really what I'm trying to get at. But more or less, I think this was a realistic representation of kids in high school. Especially like when you're almost graduating high school, you're almost an adult. You know, like that's a point in your life where you're in between being a kid and in between being an adult, and there's a lot of shit going on.
Yeah, and I think the Western world kind of, you know. Oh, those fucking teenagers. Oh, those young kids. It's like
there's not much respect.
Yeah, it's like almost until you're 30, really, you're kind of like looked at as still really young by most, like, I don't know, 40 to 60-year-old adults.
Totally, yeah. No,
They
you're
look at
still
you
a
as
kid.
really, you're still a kid, right?
Like, at what point do you stop being called a kid?
I think I
18?
would say 30 actually, man. I'd say by the time you're 30, because I can
still a
picture.
kid?
I can picture some. Not.
Do I call you a kid?
technically.
No one calls you a kid now.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like fucking 40 to 60-year-old adults kind of look at 25-year-olds. Fuck, you're still.
Oh, I see
young.
what you're saying.
You're still
okay.
a kid. Like,
Got you,
and
got
I
you.
think the point that sort of changes and they start that those comments end would be closer to 30. I really think.
Right.
Because at 30, by the time you're a little bit more established in your career and your living situation generally, I think.
Well, like it's kind of like 13 going on 30, right? With
That too.
Jennifer Garner.
Great movie. Tune in next week, guys. We'll be covering 13 going
Never.
on 30.
I will not cover a Mark Ruffalo film. I refuse to.
Dude, guy's great. You can't deny.
I hate Mark Ruffalo. I think I hate Eddie Redmayne, though. I just want to clarify that. I was thinking about it more. I really don't like that guy.
Okay, well, I think this is a good
there.
point to end it, and I've got lots of questions now, having
Yeah,
chatted
I'm looking
about
forward to. Okay, well, hear me out.
Yeah.
Before we close, what's one thing you're looking out for in the second viewing?
I want to know more about the relationship between Greg and his dad, because I think there was some cool. I think his dad might have introduced him to some neat movies or some neat food. I don't know. I think there was something.
No, yeah, you're right.
Excuse me, more there.
I remember that too. I want like for more of those film like history Easter eggs, because I definitely noticed a few, but I know there's more there, and I wanna find some of them. So we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we're doing our second viewing impressions on Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. Sorry.
Me and Earl and the Dying
So
Girl.
many
Yeah.
fucking ands in this movie. Anyways, catch you later.
And we're back.
All right, everybody. Well, we just finished watching Me and Earl and the Dying Girl for the second time. So, of course, this is our second viewing thoughts on the film. Just overall, right off the bat, Dan, what did you think before we get a little in depth?
Well, I think I want to answer kind of the questions we left it with, which was both what we wanted to get out of the second viewing. And I think I got what I wanted. And I think I got what you wanted out of it, too, which is I was seeing a lot more movie references and movie knowledge placed around, like on the set, in the background, slipped into various scenes, different styles that they filmed in themselves.
And it was fun to watch it together too, so we could kind of like say, "Oh, what's that from? Oh, this and this," and like kind of like send clips back and forth.
And then there's also some things in it that I kind of want to. I went like, "Oh fuck, that looks neat. I got to watch that movie. I haven't seen that." Or,
well, yeah, I mean their taste of movies is like, kind of like it's fantastic, but it's also like your typical like kind of guy who goes to art school or goes to like film school. It's like you need to watch these movies to understand film kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which I can respect. Yeah,
not necessarily a bad thing.
No.
Or it can make a person sound like an asshole sometimes, but that's...
Yeah, I mean, it depends. But there's a reason why they're essential viewing, that's what I'll call it.
Yeah.
Watch out for our new segment, essential viewing. Just kidding.
But, what was your initial thoughts on the second going?
Well, like you said, I really did pick out some really good Easter egg-ish kind of things in terms of film that I really liked. Just the fact that they covered like shit from like Werner Herzog up to like Akira Kurosawa. Like, I don't know, it's just, I mean, I'm not really an older person, but like I feel like I had no idea who those people were when I was their age. So it's maybe a small idea, but not nearly to the depth.
I think a lot of that culture comes from their dad, which is represented pretty well because he's always cooking weird types of meals and he's like a definition of a guy who's trying to immerse himself in every culture ever.
Well, he did show them their first Werner Herzog film at the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
Which I kind of remember, like I just kind of forgot about that. I remember that being a part of the film, but anyways.
Yeah.
But overall, like I really, really like this movie. Actually, I think it's just a really well crafted movie. It's the story itself has no, how do I put this? It doesn't really whenever it bides time, it has like the pace is a little bit slower. It's never for like just to fill time or anything. That's never filler. Everything is important.
Yeah, it's like they could have had a 6-hour movie and refined it to the best hour and a half that they possibly had.
I feel like that's what they did.
It turns out being really fantastic. And I think one of the things we mentioned in the first half of this cast was that it's a kind of like a coming of age story, but this on the second time around, I'm realizing it's less that and more kind of coping with the reality of life, and sort of follows someone
I think
who
that could still. I think that could still. In terms of coming of age, I think that still fits, to be honest.
I guess, but I guess you could also replace the characters instead of high school characters. You could replace them with 25-year-olds.
Well, that's why the movie's great.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the whole plot and the story could be told in a very similar way and have a slightly different dynamic with a different age group. Like it doesn't matter who the story centers around, high school seniors or 25-year-olds looking for a house, or newlyweds about to have a kid. Like, could center around all kinds of different people, but it's just a good story, really.
Oh yeah, it's so concise in what it's trying to do, and you're bringing up like coming of age stories. Like, one thing I noticed though was the fact that he's at one point watching the 400 Blows, and also has a poster of it in his room with a Criterion Collection logo on it. Shout out to Criterion Collection. If you guys want to sponsor us, I would love some DVDs and whatever. But they also even remade it, called The 400 Bros, which is hilarious. But the reason I bring that up is because that's kind of considered, maybe not the first, but the seminal beginnings of a coming-of-age story. So in 1959, and that's where a lot of like the tropes and cliches of average coming-of-age stories about teenagers or young adults come from. So the fact that they include that is a nice, really, that's the kind of shit I really like when it comes to a movie. It's like, and this is one thing I kind of wrote down, was just like this film itself is kind of directed by film. Like, it's centered around the idea of film culture, which we briefly mentioned this in the first half, but...
Right, and you can't do that if you're not prepared to make a good movie, really, because otherwise you just make a mockery of what you're trying to reproduce.
But that's why it's funny. It's because that's kind of what they're doing, right? They're making a mockery in a way. I mean, they appreciate the cinema, but they're still...
do it in a... Like, the movie is shot in such a way that has to reflect good film, because the main characters in the movie like good film, though they themselves make jokes about it or cliches of it, or sort of a little bit more lighthearted.
Fair, yeah. I mean, it's funny to think, and people always use the word like meta, like, meta narrative, like it's kind of self-aware of what's going on. And it's like this movie is like the least meta narrative in a way, where it's like film is surrounding it, and there's a film in the movie, and it's about making a movie, and it's a film itself. But yet it's not that cliche meta-ness, you know what I'm talking about?
It also doesn't feel like it, because if you hadn't sort of slightly analyzed it like we are, you probably would have come out of it going, oh yeah, they were big into film, but I was thinking more about the relationship between, Greg, Earl, and the dying girl, Rachel.
Right.
Right? Because
that's
the emotional backing of the movie. Generally, it's represented in the films that he makes for her or makes for himself as well. But... yeah. I mean, realistically, it's about the relationship between these three people.
And that's what makes it great for me, though, because it's like there's so much going on, but at the end of the day, it's about the characters. It's like it easily could just be like a one-note movie, in a way. Like it's a simple concept on paper, in a way, but it's executed so well with like the age group they choose. Yeah. Because like you're saying, if this was a movie made for like 25-year-olds, even then, like the idea of cancer and people dying, it's a lot different, honestly. But when you're 17, it's completely different, really. Right,
but I think it could be a first for someone in their teens or someone, in their 20s.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
It could have a similar dynamic, but what I'm going to say is that the idea of the film is great, and I think certain aspects of it could change and it would still be great. Not that I'm saying that the one that they chose is worse off, but I think the one they chose is perfectly fitting. I'm just saying I really think this is a great storyline.
Definitely. And one thing I noticed doing a little bit of research about this movie afterwards was that it won the Phoenix Film Critics Society Award for the Overlooked Film of the Year, which I just think is so true, because this is the kind of movie, like, this was not nominated for any Oscars. It wasn't really anywhere. It had a small theater release. The radar, yeah. It played in where we're from, actually, for like a week or two. But I work in a movie theater, and there wasn't huge crowds coming for it. It was a decent...
Right, and it's funny you say that, because the how I found this movie was by looking for movies that went over my head in 2015 just by a Google search.
Well, a coworker of mine actually saw this film, and he straight up told me, he said, this is the best movie I've seen this year, but also it made me fall in love with movies again. It made me realize why film's important. He was so serious about it, and it was kind of strange. I was like, really? Like, me and Earl and Dying Girl? I don't know. It's based off the trailer. Yeah. I was just kind of like, okay.
I didn't get that
like,
impression from the trailer. Yeah,
I mean,
but
I kind of get it because this guy. I mean, this the person I'm talking about is just he's a big film kind of like snob. He's kind of that stereotypical film guy.
yeah,
And I think he like kind of saw what he was explaining to me is that he saw like the childlike sense of wonder and like why you should love film again through this movie. And I mean, I didn't have that much of like a crazy emotional connection with it, but I can understand that, I think.
But I think a point worth talking about is it almost doesn't seem necessarily that the sort of the main character in the movie, Greg, loves film to no end. Like he doesn't come across as a Steve Jobs of film. He just kind of seems like a guy who fell into film and has done it and likes it because he has done it and continues to do it. It's not necessarily that he's like dedicated every millisecond of his time to doing it. It's just that it just seems a part of his life. Well, it just is a part of his life.
More or less the way I kind of see that.
Cool.
More or less the way I kind of see that is kind of in the way that he doesn't see it as a job or work. It's part of his life.
Yeah.
He just loves it.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
he does love film. I really do. I think he grew up with it, and it's second nature to him. And he kind of, he's that kind of person people would probably say like, oh, you watch too many movies, Greg, kind of thing. Like, because his whole perception of life and like how to react to things is kind of based on what he sees in the movies. And,
it's true. Yeah, that's very true.
And I think
that's very true. And maybe that's what I'm seeing is like he's not projecting his love. Like, oh my God, I love the movies. I love the movies. I love the movies.
No, and he doesn't want to tell people that he even makes movies. It's a really personal thing to him, more or less than like he's trying to project it to outside of him.
Yeah,
if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
but I do think he's a film lover. I mean, he has to be if he knows all these fucking movies. Like, it's ridiculous. But his relationship with Earl was also kind of cool to watch again. Like, I mean, we liked him the first time, but I love that fucking guy. Earl's great. Yeah. He's a fantastic character.
You gonna play with them titties?
Yeah, I'm playing with seen those titties, though? I don't know. It's like he has this level... He kind of comes off as, like, I guess, the comedic relief at first, to a degree. But they paint him a picture... But at the same time, though, like, that's why this movie's great, because... Sure, his first couple lines are, I guess, something you'd probably laugh at. But before he even says a line... Or maybe after the first line, perhaps. Yeah, I guess after the first time he says, them titties. They tell the story why they met, or how they met, and also that, like, he likes what Greg likes, and they have things in common, and, the friendship blossoms from there, sort of thing.
And so Greg's narrating the film as he's telling the audience how him and Earl got to become friends. And one thing he mentions was, at that point, was that Earl and I aren't really friends, we're coworkers. Right.
And that's a great point to bring up, because that plays a lot into Greg as a person and Greg's emotions and he's scared to commit to anything. He's scared to, kind of reveal his entire self to someone, whether it's his best friend or his parents or anyone, from what we can understand. Mm-hmm. But if anyone were to understand Greg the most, it's Earl, and Earl makes that apparent too. He kind of tells Rachel straight up, he's scared of this and he's self-conscious, and it might be because of his parents, and like, but it's something a best friend would say. So like, they're best friends, despite what Greg says. They're best friends.
Yeah, matter of fact, Earl says it to Rachel at some point, right? Like, yeah, me and Greg are friends.
Right. He's like he wouldn't admit that though.
Yeah, he would admit that. Yeah.
No, that works in really great ways, because that way the character of Earl doesn't seem like a side character in a way. Like, I guess maybe he's a supporting character, fair enough, but at the same time, he is so well developed right off the bat, Yeah. And same with Rachel too, actually. Like, right off the bat, you kind of get what Rachel's about. She's like, she's maybe a bit more reserved in terms of dialogue, and like, you kind of find out a bit more about her near the very end. But, maybe in terms of how she's introduced and compared to Earl, she's not as, like, strongly developed. But by the end of it, the whole film, like, everyone in this movie has a purpose and a place.
Yeah.
And it's really, you don't see that in a lot of movies, honestly. Like, even some of my favorite movies don't hit that as perfectly as this movie does. Not to say this movie's a perfect film, but on, like, the small cast of characters it focuses on, it does it really well.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I especially love the character development in the movie. I think that was probably my favorite part. That and the ending was pretty fantastic too.
I kind of I got choked up the first time. I got choked up again the second time. I'm not.
Yeah, it's pretty heartfelt. But I like the lighter parts of the movie. They make me feel happier.
Well, they do,
and that's
why it's good. Like, the movie, it's not heavy until the very end. And the movie makes a point to tell you that pretty much.
It's not. As a matter of fact, the narrator, Greg, which is also the main character, withholds that it's a powerful sort of sad endings or sort of heartfelt ending. He withholds that from you and then reveals that from you and actually apologizes for it as he's narrating.
Well, and that's telling to his character, right? He doesn't want to fully commit to telling you. He's scared to reveal his emotions. He's scared to tell you what's really going on.
Yeah, which actually plays out and makes a fantastic script. Now, the very, very ending of the movie. This is actually not a huge spoiler, but the story.
We've spoiled this whole movie at this point, man.
Okay, so this the story that Greg is narrating ends up being the same story he's handing as some form of application or project to a university or a college that he's.
Is it Pittsburgh State?
Yeah, Pittsburgh State, something like that.
Pennsylvania State? I don't know.
And that's how the movie ends with him printing.
Yeah, well, I wrote that too. Is like the first frame is the last frame. I love when movies do that. It's great. It's a bookend, right? I like that. Mm-hmm. Opens up the same way, ends the same way. It's even better if the film what's in between is equally as great. Do you want to talk about the film Greg makes? Because that was like something I really
that's a good last point to talk about because
that for me was when I saw this movie the first time, I knew there was more importance to it. And I was like, if I ever revisit this, I want to like try to like dig into it. Maybe that's something I probably should have brought up on the first viewing, what I wanted to look into. But I got some notes and I got some thoughts. But Dan, like, what did you think of it?
Well, it seemed way more abstract than any of his other films, at least the bits that you saw of it. It was noticeably more sort of serious in tone. And it contrasted the idea of doing some stop motion stuff with some live action stuff. It was just very, very different than,
right.
And I think it kind of reflected what Greg sees. Do you know what I mean? Like, not how Greg interprets a movie necessarily, because this wasn't an interpretation of a movie. It was an original movie that he had made, which was the first one he'd ever made, so we're led to believe. But, yeah, I think it was very much a reflection of what's in his own brain. Like a little scattered and doses of emotion all over the screen, not really knowing. But I think it was important that as Rachel was watching it towards the end, Greg was in front of the screen while the movie was playing and crying, looking at her.
Yeah, well, I think because at this point we've seen Rachel go through the entire catalog, or almost the entire catalog, of what Greg and, Earl have made. Yes. So she's familiar with not only Greg as a person, but also Greg and Earl's work and like how they make film and essentially
his most personal possession.
Like right. I mean, she's the only one besides, I guess, his dad that they've told.
Yeah, and he says at one point, like, Dad, you're not allowed to watch these, which means that he probably hasn't seen all of them, I would guess.
Right. So she's seen the catalog, and yeah, when it gets to this point, it's crazy. Like, you bring up the abstract visuals, and that plays a big key in this, because I think Greg is a person who's very, like, he's conscious of what's going on, but he's not really conscious of how other people are feeling, more or less how he's feeling. And I don't think he's a selfish guy, but I think more or less when he was going to make this film, he didn't want it to be selfish. He made a point of that. He's like, this needs to be for you. I don't want this to be about me. And that's why he was getting frustrated when everyone else was like making little quips about, I hope you'll be okay. Like, it was just very typical stuff. And he's just like, he knew right away, like, fuck, Rachel's not going to like this. This is not what she needs. You know, not that he's above it, but it's like.
Well, she led on to that because she said at one point to him before she was this sick in the hospital, she mentioned something like, you know, like, I see the way people look at me, they're disgusted with me, and they tell me I'm beautiful, but they're lying, and it's nice, but it's not helping, and it's not what I need.
Yeah, I mean, he took that to heart, obviously, and he understood that.
Yeah, so.
But what happens here, I think, like, just my interpretation of this film, or the film within a film, is that he's using the shape and color to show his emotion because he doesn't know how to say it. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's using abstract visuals because that's kind of all he can do to display these serious tones, because he doesn't know how to say things properly, so to speak.
Right.
And he uses it in a way where there's like a stream of consciousness, where it's displaying ideas in a stream, but it's not on paper. And I think that's fucking brilliant. Like, it's he's using, like, you're talking about, like, different film techniques. Like, he's looking at all the films he's watched in the past, him and Earl have watched, taking all these different, like, you know, whether it's filmmaking techniques or it's just, you know, concepts from film, and, like, making that his own, truly making it his own, but doing it for someone else. So it's a selfless act at the same time.
And he does bring selective characters into that film.
Right, that's a
like,
good point.
Only a certain amount, like, and the people that ends up being closest to Rachel at her darkest points are at her closest to her end.
Exactly, and it's the people that Rachel, like, it's the people that Rachel knows understand her.
Yeah.
And it's Earl, Greg, and her mother. Mm-hmm. And that's why they're the only ones in the film, because no one else that was interviewed actually understood her.
Yeah, exactly.
Even her friends.
Yeah, everyone else says, like, wish you the best, you can do it, you can overcome it, which is sort of a fake cheer. And though they might actually mean it, it's less personable because they don't know her, right?
Right. And I think, like, a lot of the visual scene in this clip that he makes is, like, a lot of them are stop motion, and a lot of them are always fleeting or falling apart.
Right.
Which I think is just saying that, like, this is the passing of her life and the passing of their friendship, but this is how I remember and think of it.
And he's got opening into a solid color, which is kind of neat, which could say, like, new beginning in some way.
Right. I mean, or just the fact that it's ending almost, you know? Like, it's beginning anew.
Yes.
And I think, I don't know, it's kind of, it comes a little bit out of left field in a way at first, but then when it hits, you're like, this is fucking perfect. It makes so much sense.
Yeah.
But I think that's exactly what I think the filmmaker wanted, and I think that's even what the character of Greg probably wanted.
And I think for the most part, you probably will notice the abstractness of the film he makes for her less. You'll notice that part less than you'll notice the people at the beginning of the film. But I think the abstract part is just as important, which is cool to see that we picked up on that the second time around.
Well, it's cool too because, I mean, Greg and Earl are, like, I feel like they're empowered by genre in terms of film. Like, they're always searching for an answer through what kind of films already exist.
Yeah.
And I mean, as soon as they kind of decide to actually do the project making this film, they go to their movie store or bookstore, whatever it is, and they're looking through genres. They're like, how do we do this? Like, where should we go? And it's fun. It's fun to think that they took a bunch of ideas rather than maybe just one, like basing off one film. And like you said, they made something completely original for the first time.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with that they probably didn't find their answer in any one film, and they had to actually look inside themselves to make the movie. And by the time that they did make the movie, they were just drawing what they had sort of subconsciously and maybe consciously learned from filming those other movies and what they had seen in the past.
It's just fucking good.
It all contributes to a really good movie. So yeah. I highly recommend that you check out Me, Earl, and Earl, and The Dying Girl.
The way this, like, yeah, I would recommend this too, obviously. But the way this, like the second last scene where Greg is inside Rachel's house, and her room, and he's looking around, and he stumbles upon all these books, and the books have like these carvings in which she is displaying her thoughts and memories, and you know it's fucking beautiful because it's a perfect correlation to, you know, Rachel loves books and that's her art form that she enjoys, and she's putting herself in it. It's the same way that Greg loves movies and puts himself in these movies. It's an exact correlation.
And I think it ties directly into what Greg and Earl's favorite teacher, the one that they spend lunch with, into directly what he said, which was, you'll find yourself learning about a person even after they pass.
And so that's exactly what happens for him. Mm-hmm. And it's just great to see, like, the last thing that Greg did for Rachel was that film of, like, a combination of all the feelings and ideas he could display to her. And then when he was to go into her room, what she left for him, essentially, on purpose or not on purpose, is the same thing, but in terms of what she loved. It's like, it's really heartwarming. It's like this movie is kind of on a straight line, and then it progresses, and it has like this final finish that...
The crescendo
that wasn't maybe necessary, but... Or not that it wasn't necessary, but like expected, I suppose. But it was so fulfilling, and it paid off so well.
That's part of what it makes it great, is that you're not necessarily expecting that from this movie in the beginning.
And he makes it clear. He doesn't. It's funny. It's this kind of like reverse psychology of like you shouldn't expect that, so you don't even think about it. And then when it happens, you're like, well, fuck, you mentioned it. I should have known, right? And that's the kind of I don't know. It's fucking great. It's funny to think that like these characters, and it feels like I know them really well in a way. Like I connect with them a lot more the second time around, and like I'd be confidently enough to say that this is probably my favorite movie I saw this year that didn't come out this year.
Right.
I'm gonna go ahead and say that because it hit me a lot, and like the first time I liked it enough, but the second time it's fucking great.
It's definitely one of those movies that we have stumbled upon that does definitely hold value in the second viewing.
That was like the first thing I said when we finished watching. I was like, dude, I'm so glad we did this.
Yeah, it is a great choice. So highly recommend you check out Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. Thanks for tuning into the cast.
You guys have a good one.